Hello, everyone. For this week's discussion, I decided to dive into the Cambodian genocide, which happened between 1975 and 1979. The whole thing was orchestrated by a radical communist group called the Khmer Rouge, led by a guy named Pol Pot. To really understand how things got so extreme, we can look at what Chapter 9 calls the social construction of ethnicity. The Khmer Rouge basically reinvented what it meant to be Cambodian based on this wild idea of purity. I'm going to use in quotes. They decided that poor, uneducated, rural peasants were the old people, meaning the pure, true heart of the nation. And on the flip side, they branded city dwellers, uneducated people, and ethnic minorities as new people who had been corrupted by Western capitalism. By framing these groups as completely different and dangerous, the regime justified wiping them out to restart society at what they called Year Zero. So, why did they feel entitled to do this? Well, their ultimate goal was to force a completely classless, farming based communist utopia. But outside political chaos played a role in the whole thing as well. The instability of the Vietnam War next door and heavy US bombing campaigns in the Cambodian countryside left the population traumatized and angry. The Khmer Rouge exploited that chaos to grab power, and the regime only lasted about 4 years, but the damage was very much done. Somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million people died, which was roughly a quarter of the entire country's population. They did this through horrific state-sponsored actions like mass executions and what we now call the killing fields, systematic torture at prisons like S21, forced labor, and deliberate starvation. One of our assignment prompts asks if ethnic cleansing is the right term here. Personally, I think it fits in some ways, but it doesn't tell the whole story or set the entire picture. On one hand, ethnic cleansing absolutely happened. The Khmer Rouge explicitly went after minority groups like Muslims, ethnic Vietnamese, and ethnic Chinese. In fact, a UN-backed tribunal officially ruled that genocide was committed against both of those populations. But here's the twist. The vast majority of the 2 million victims belong to the same dominant Khmer ethnic group as the killers. They were targeted for their education, their jobs, and just for living in a city. Because of that, a lot of sociologists prefer terms like autogenocide, meaning a country destroying its own people, or classicide. So while ethnic cleansing explains what happened to minorities, autogenocide captures the bigger picture a little bit better. We can also spot several other patterns that Chapter 9 discusses. For starters, there's a lot of expulsion. On day one, the regime forced millions of people out of the capital city on foot. Then came the forced assimilation. They banned minority languages, religions, and traditional clothing. Everyone had to wear the exact same black pajamas to completely erase their individual identity. This then forced a massive wave of refugees across the borders into Thailand and Vietnam. Eventually, international safety nets started to open up, and countries like the US, France, Canada, and Australia granted permanent asylum to hundreds of thousands of Cambodians. And who actually stopped the crisis? It was not the UN or Western militaries. It was actually the military of Vietnam that invaded in late 1978 and overthrew Pol Pot's regime by January 1979. After that, global safety nets like the United Nations and the Red Cross stepped in to run refugee camps, and provide desperate humanitarian aid that was needed. And to wrap things up, the biggest takeaway for me was just how dangerous it can be when a government starts socially constructing us versus them narratives by turning neighbors against each other over unimportant labels like rural versus urban, a regime managed to destroy a quarter of its own population in just 4 years. And it really shows that how we define and construct differences in society can literally be a matter of life and death. Um, so thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to see if you guys have any questions for me or any comments, please let me know.